What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Who Gives a Dram. Today is Monday, November 17th, 2025, and I've been gone for a minute. Well, actually, a little bit longer than a minute. It's been a few months, but I'm happy to be back behind the microphone. We've got an exciting episode today. We're going to review a limited edition Angel's Envy release, which I have pictured right in front of me right here. We're going to compare it to something that I made. We're going to go through some whiskey news, and we're going to appreciate the fact that it is now Holly Jolly season. But at the top of the episode here, I want to remind you guys, if you haven't checked us out, make sure you're following Who Gives a Dram on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube for video podcasts. We're also available on the Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'm Connor_whiskey on Instagram, and make sure you follow my company, McTavish Spirits, on all social media, and keep on the lookout there. We had a lot of stuff going on, and that's kind of where we fall into what's been happening, what's been going on in my life. I mean, I believe the last episode that we got into was June, maybe of June 2025, somewhere around there, but. Regardless, the end of the year, the last 3 months, quarter four for us in business, or in corporate. I used to say quarter four, Q4 all the time in sales. Back before I started McTavish, Q4, got to close out strong. Hated every second of it. But this time of year, brings me back to when I first started Who Gives a Dram. We started October 2020. And it just kind of brings me back to, never mind Christmas and Holly Jolly season. And if you know me, if you listen to this podcast, if you know me personally, whatever, I love spooky season. But the transition from spooky season to Holly Jolly season is instantaneous. October 31st, we're listening to Monster Mash. November 1st, we're listening to Silver and Gold by Bert Ives from Yukon Cornelius in the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer Christmas special from 1964. Anyways, that's probably one of my favorite Christmas songs, but it just brings me back, this time of year brings me back to starting the podcast and how excited I was to start this journey, and how it feels like an entirely different space, the bourbon space back then, and being online and writing reviews and doing the podcasting, doing this, going to Bourbon with Friends, and doing everything in between. It kind of brings me back to that. So I figured, what better time now than, I'm not traveling for a little bit, and I'm keeping myself very busy here in Rhode Island, but while I'm home, let's get some podcasting going. Let's get it going. So we're here. We're cozy season, Holly Jolly season, whatever you want to call it. We're here, and this is whiskey season. For those that are in the whiskey industry, whether you own your own brand, you're a master distiller, you're a brand ambassador, you're a whatever you are, this is the busiest time of year for brands like McTavish. This is when people want to go out and drink whiskey because it's colder, or buy whiskey because it's gift-giving season. That being said, McTavish Spirits is going to be coming out with a marketing strategy, or forgetting the word. We're going to be pushing direct-to-consumer sales more. Let me put it that way. Between now and the end of the year, we're going to make a conceited effort to get you guys to buy bottles online. And the reason we're going to do that is because we are smack dab in the middle of doing another production run of the War Chief. There's nothing changes. It's still 7-year bottled and bond bourbon whiskey. It's still 75-21-4 from MGP. Nothing's changed. That's what my job, one of my jobs with McTavish Spirits, is to make sure that nothing changes in the consistency of the palate. And if something does have to change, you'll know. But we got it nailed down, picked out a fantastic batch of barrels that we're bottling now, and we'll have more product because we ran out of the War Chief, more or less. So, but that comes at a price tag, so we need to sell some whiskey. And what we're going to do is we're going to push online sales, so that way, no matter where you are, you can buy whiskey online. You can buy McTavish Spirits online, the War Chief to be specific. We're available in 47 states, so it's really a opportune time if you are a fan of McTavish Spirits or have seen us on social media or anywhere else, or just a fan of Graham maybe you love The Hobbit. This is a great opportunity to buy a bottle as a gift in 47 states. Unfortunately, we're not available internationally anymore. We're working on having that change, one of our 2026 goals, but nonetheless, it's a perfect gift-giving season, and it's a perfect gift-giving bottle. You'll pay more or less $100 all in for the Ward Chief online because it's $20 shipping, taxes, all that stuff. So if you're not in one of our retail states, if there's not a retailer close to you that carries McTavish, you can always go to our website and buy a bottle or 2 or 3 or 5 there. And we will be running some marketing campaigns in the near future where we'll be giving away some cool prizes and some opportunities for people that buy bottles online. And it all comes together nicely because this is bourbon drinking season. It's not only gift giving season, but it's bourbon drinking season. The weather gets colder. There's a bite in the air. I mean, I think tonight it's supposed to get down to like 30 something degrees here in Rhode Island. So, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I'm one of those weirdos that loves when it gets dark early. So I'm like a vampire. This is the best time of year for me. And it just so happens to also be whiskey drinking season. Cozy season, soup season, bourbon season, whiskey season, fire season, whatever you want to call it. But we do have to acknowledge the end of spooky season because it means so much to me. And just a few days ago, I did watch a new Frankenstein movie. I posted about it on my Instagram story, and I really, really liked it a lot. I didn't think I was going to like it as much as I did. I think Guillermo del Toro is a great director, but his most recent project that I watched was Cabinet of Curiosities on Netflix, and I didn't love it. I really didn't love it. I don't love super CGI stuff in horror, which is why I don't love the It TV show or really even the It movies. I don't like when it's very obviously CGI, which is why, like the Bathsheba scene in Conjuring 1 where she's on top of the armoire and jumps down, that is so terrifying because it's real. It's a person in makeup and it's scary. Whereas, one of the demons in Cabinet of Curiosities on Netflix is CGI and it's not scary. But this was a true representation of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and it was really good. It was really good. And it got me thinking about, I knew I was going to be talking about this Angel's Envy peated cask finish release today. And, the story of Frankenstein's monster is, putting together a new being from different parts of other beings. And it kind of just ties along to this new fad in whiskey, which is not necessarily new. It's been going on forever, but finishing, bourbons or whiskeys in different types of casks. And, kind of Frankensteining releases to get something that's unique in a market that is definitely oversaturated with what's available and the options that you have. Just like Oscar Isaac pieced together Jacob Elordi and Frankenstein, Angel's Envy is piecing together this beautiful distillery-only release, which is a peated cask finished rye whiskey. And I've got some more details about it via their website right here. I'm going to pour it in. Do this. And obviously, as you can see, if you're watching this on YouTube, I've had some of this, and I know I like it. But I want to give it a proper review and see what we think of it now that it's a bit colder outside, and I've let it sit for about a month, not touching it. And then what we'll do is we will compare the Angel's Envy peated cask finished rye whiskey to my creation, my Frankenstein, Legacy Series number 1, which is also finished in peated Scotch casks. Now, the main difference between Legacy Series 1 from McTavish Spirits and this peated cask finished rye whiskey from Angel's Envy is that the Angel's Envy is a rye whiskey and the McTavish Spirits is a bourbon whiskey. So, all in all, what I expect to get that's different from both of these whiskeys is I expect the Angel's Envy to be, spice forward, smoke in the background, where I know Legacy Series is sweeter forward and then smoke in the background as well. But I'm curious to put these two side by side and compare and contrast the level of peated Scotch influence on each release. I've never done this before. This is the first time I've done this. You would think I would do it sooner, but haven't had time. So this Angel's Envy peated cask finished rye whiskey. From the Angel's Envy website, it melds bold rye character with Isla's signature peat smoke. Aged 6 years and finished for another year in Scotch casks. It delivers a peppery, herbal profile and a charred lemon color at 100 proof. Again, this is a distillery-only release. I was in Kentucky for the Bourbon on the Banks Festival in early October, and we also stayed in Louisville for a few nights, and we went to the Angel's Envy Distillery, obviously, and I saw this, and immediately I thought of comparing, contrasting it to Legacy Series on the podcast. So I've been planning this for about a month now, and I'm just getting around to it, and I'm very excited, but I couldn't help myself but crack this open later that night when I bought this, and I know it's good. Rye whiskey finished with peated Scotch cask is definitely a bold statement. It's two very, very opposing profiles, I think, from a smoky, almost medicinal, salty, salted meat, campfire-esque profile to a spicier, maybe mintier, more pepper-forward rye whiskey base is interesting to me, and that's the first thing I thought. We decided to use bourbon with the Legacy Series because, A, we had plenty of it from the War Chief, or, there was just plenty of it around where I could use bourbon easier as the base distillate. But I liked the juxtaposition of the sweetness of the bourbon that's in Legacy Series and then getting hit with that peated, smoky, salty, maritime, sea salt, salt water taffy type of palate that is present in many peated or Isla Scotch whiskeys. So on the nose with this Angel's Envy peated cask 6-year rye whiskey is incredibly inviting. I get a lot of classic rye on this. So a little bit of, that like pickled note, some mint cypress type of notes on that. Definitely, I could tell. It's a lot of these rye whiskeys, you can't tell it's rye from the nose, but this is one where I think you can. A 6-year rye whiskey is extremely old in the rye whiskey space, so this has had a lot of time to interact with the oak, potentially making it a bit sweeter due to the sugars in the oak cask. But nonetheless, this is very, classic rye forward. So, like a combination of that dill pickle, kind of mint cypress, peppermint, a little bit of like that sugary oak notes that you get from bourbons that are aged around this time. Maybe slight fruit in there as well. A little bit of like a citrusy, kind of like orange zest. And it's interesting that they decided to bring this in at 100 proof as well. That's, again, I would love to sit down with Owen Martin, a master distiller at Angel's Envy, and really pick his brain about this release because it hits so close to home to my release of the Legacy Series. But we'll get into the palate here. Cheers. In the Who Gives a Dram, a Glencairn. Don't even know where I got this from, but cheers. Yeah, that's just a beautiful whiskey. I forgot my water. Shoot. That's a beautiful whiskey. That really is a top-notch finished rye whiskey. One of the main differences between this and the Legacy Series to me is that the peated Scotch finish is present throughout the entire palate experience. Legacy Series, because it's finished for a shorter amount of time than 1 year, as opposed to this Angel's Envy release. The peated smokiness doesn't hit you till more of the mid to back palate, whereas this, I believe it's kind of I think it's more complex in the way that you are getting that smoky peatiness throughout the entire palate from the first time the whiskey touches your lips to even that finish, which is, I would say, medium finish. It's not super heavy in in my throat or on the swallow, but it's definitely spice driven. The rye whiskey, the base distillate here, that really comes through. So more pepper. Here, let's give it another sip. That's really good. I get a little bit of that that sugary sweetness, so vanilla custard, vanilla pudding. But yeah, it's really the smokiness is kind of, it's more muted than the Legacy Series, but it's absolutely more present throughout the entire palate experience. And I think that's where one of the main differences is here. But it's a spice driven, like almost like a cinnamon vanilla custard base, then with that peated Scotch just drizzled, kind of like Salt Bay would kind of just, remember Salt Bay? Back, like, I might be aging myself with this meme, but, the guy that used to do the salt like that. Yeah. That's kind of like how that's how the peated Scotch comes off on this. It's not as in your face as the Legacy Series, which is not better or worse. It's just different. From what I understand, this limited edition Angel's Envy release is only available at the distillery, and it's only available in 375 milliliters. I think I paid like $60-ish for this, maybe less. I could be grossly over-exaggerating that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. But this is good. I mean, that Angel's Envy is solid, real solid. If you can get some, and if you're a Scotch guy, you're gonna like that. But if we transition to the Legacy Series, and I gotta be honest, I'm not even sure if we've talked about the Legacy Series on this podcast or not. But if we haven't, a little reminder, and we can do a whole episode on it. But this is a blend that we did and released October of last year. It's a blend of 6 and 7 year bourbon whiskey, each being a mash bill of 75% corn, 21% rye, 4% malted barley, that we then finished in peated Scotch casks. It comes in at 110 proof, so it's right around the same age as the Angel's Envy release here. It's got older whiskey in it with the 7 year in there. We didn't age state this. We just said it's a blend of 6 and 7 year bourbon whiskey, where Angel's Envy decided to age state theirs at 6 years. Now that could mean there's older rye whiskey in this release, but I would be willing to bet that they would put that on their promotional material if that were the case. So I would say this is probably just 6 year rye whiskey, and it's fantastic. This is a blend of 6 and 7 year bourbon that we did to commemorate Graham's family and kind of Graham and I shared appreciation of kinship. You know, we're both very close with our families, and our motto, "A Scotsman's Dream of America." Um, that there's a lot behind that. Graham's Hollywood career, coming from Scotland with a dream over to Hollywood and then landing his role in Rambo, has a lot to do with the influence of Scotch whiskey on what we know now as American whiskey, bourbon, rye, now American single malt. Scotch whiskey really influenced us over on this side of the pond in terms of whiskey making drastically. So paying our homage to that with Graham being Scottish, and we thought, what better way to honor that with our first limited edition release being a Scotch finished bourbon, because there's not that many Scotch finished bourbons on the market. Matter of fact, I think we're one of the only ones. Now, we didn't have a lot of barrels of this, so that's why we did about only 250 cases, but this is a special one. And if we're going to go on the nose with the Legacy Series, it's very, you wouldn't be able to tell that this is a Scotch finished bourbon right off the nose. It's very sweet. I get a lot of that vanilla cake frosting, like a confectionery sugar frosting type of thing, some cake batter. There's a little bit of like an almond nuttiness there, as well as just your typical notes of oak and caramel and what's typically there in a bourbon whiskey. But I tell everybody that I taste this on that you wouldn't be able to tell from the nose that this is a finished bourbon, nonetheless a Scotch finished bourbon. But once you get to the palate, which we will right now, cheers, it changes drastically. Yeah. So on the palate, the front of the palate's super sweet, and then it kind of just changes on a dot to that real smoky peatiness, mixing with the very cake batter sweetness. It just kind of makes something that's, I think, incredibly good. And the as I suspected, the main difference between the Legacy Series and this Angel's Envy is exactly what I thought. The base distillate is what changes these the most. So the rye whiskey, you're looking at a spice-driven, deeper, more subtle sweetness, more pointed rye spice, and a more consistent Scotch influence on the entirety of the palate. Whereas Legacy Series is very rich and sweet, and it's more in your face with the two elements of bourbon and Scotch. And for what we were going for, I would prefer to have the Legacy be what it is, because I think the Legacy Series does a great job of showing the two differences, very stark differences between bourbon whiskey and not only Scotch whiskey, but peated Scotch whiskey. That was the whole point of this bottle. And I tell people, this is a perfect gateway bourbon for Scotch drinkers, and this is a perfect way for bourbon drinkers to kind of dip their toes into Scotch. And that was exactly our goal. I wish we made more of this. We only did 250 cases. But you can still buy some Legacy Series online via our website. It'll redirect you to the Sealbox website, and they still have some bottles there. They ship to 40 states. I believe it's going for $80 online there, and I would suggest, especially for the holidays, if you can find a bottle of this, pick it up, because it's never going to be available again. Man, these are two... I'm not going to say which one's better or worse, because that's not for me to say, and I don't really believe in that. I think that these are two... I really think that anybody would say these are two special whiskeys. And I'm biased because I created the Legacy Series with Graham and Ivy and my entire team. But I think anybody whether you're an influencer or just a casual whiskey drinker or a whiskey reviewer or in the business. I just think that these are two special bottles. And if the Angel's Envy Rye whiskey was available in 750s, it'd probably cost around $100. The Legacy Series is a little bit cheaper than that, but in reality, it should be about $100 bottle. That was my bad. I messed up on the pricing, but they're both special. They're both unique, and they both do a great job at really exemplifying how a Scotch cask can influence an American whiskey. And there's really no better way to see it here. You got a very good rye whiskey distilled at Angel's Envy, and you got a really good bourbon whiskey distilled at MGP. How do you take these two and compare and contrast when they're both finished in peated Scotch casks? So these are both very appropriate for this time of year, which is part of the reason why I picked them. But I've been wanting to do this compare and contrast for a very long time now. And even on the nose, you can get I get when comparing them directly, this Angel's Envy rye is just super dill rye forward on the nose, whereas the Legacy Series is literally just a cake. Yeah. And then they're just very good. I love both these bottles. I'm biased to the Legacy Series, but that's because I made it. But anyways, that's a little bit of this review. There's been a lot of whiskey news that's happened in the past, few months, but especially in the past, let's say week or 2 weeks, there's been a lot of stories. Something that I saw that was interesting, and I've got them pulled up here. I've got a few articles here that's all in the whiskey world. This one's on the Whiskey Wash. Let me pull it up. Accept all cookies. Sazerac Rye Full Proof joins Buffalo Trace's permanent portfolio. Now, Sazerac Rye was one of those bottles when I first started doing this podcast back in October 2020. You couldn't find it anywhere. You would have to, quote unquote, hunt for it. I don't like the word hunt, but you really had to hunt it down. It was not readily available. Now it's everywhere. And it's a very, very solid, I think a 6-year rye whiskey. Obviously from Sazerac, so you know it's going to be mass produced. But this new Full Proof is really interesting. And if I remember correctly, the price point is pretty good, which it should be. It's Buffalo Trace. They can afford to do that. $39.99 per 750 milliliter bottle, which is really good, especially this day and age. I'm not going to read this entire article, but I will say that Sazerac Rye is a very solid rye, and having it at full proof, at 125 proof, is awesome. Not only because it's a different expression in Sazerac Rye's portfolio, but there's not enough full proofs out there. Obviously, 1792 does a full proof, and I'm sure there's a few others that I'm not thinking of. But I think full proof is really cool, and it forces you to kind of ask yourself, well, what the heck is full proof? Like, it forces you to do some research and learn a little bit about what that means and how it changes the complexity of the whiskey. And it's good for whiskey to have stuff like full proof be nationally recognized. I've always been a fan of stuff like that. Things that have tangible meaning. Obviously, small batch, there's no real legal meaning behind it. Single barrel, technically, there is. There's other, romanticized labels out there that don't technically mean anything. We could have put small batch on the Legacy Series if we wanted to. This was a 3-barrel blend. It's about as small as it gets. But, the release is designed as a full-bodied sipping whiskey, expanding a brand lineup that includes the original 90 proof and a recently launched 100 proof bottling. Sazerac Rye whiskey, with its historic ties to New Orleans, is a key brand in the American rye category. The launch comes as consumer interest in rye whiskey continues to experience a resurgence alongside a significant market trend toward higher proof expressions that offer more intense flavor profiles. Now, I think that's true in the whiskey category. I don't know if that's true in the general public. I could be wrong, though. It was developed as part of Buffalo Trace's $1.2 million expansion. The decade-long project included the addition of new still houses and enhanced distilling capacity, enabling greater production of its core whiskeys. Then some quotes. But overall, I'm a fan of new whiskey coming to the market that's going to be readily available. I was a big fan of the Wild Turkey 101 8-year when it dropped. I have some that I'm sure I'll review on the podcast here soon. But anything that's new in the whiskey world that will be readily available for a solid price, that will be solid whiskey, I'm a fan of. And then I saw this real interesting article this morning titled, open link. Titled, this comes from Stock Titan. I don't know why it came up on Stock Titan. I thought I saw it on Whiskey Advocate. Blade & Bow unveils its oldest whiskey ever, a rare 30-year-old Kentucky straight bourbon. Diageo brand Blade & Bow unveils a limited 30-year-old Kentucky straight bourbon laid down in spring 1993, which is before I was born, by the way. Not only before I was born, it was 3 years before I was born, and it was before my parents were even married. That's how long ago this whiskey was distilled. And it was distilled at Stitzel Weller. The expression blends liquid from 42 barrels, is bottled at 54.5% ABV. That's insane. Non-chill filtered, and was hand-selected by Nicole Austin, Director of American Whiskey Liquid Development at Diageo, I'm assuming. Availability begins in November 2025 at the Stitzel Weller Visitor Center. Suggested retail price is $1,200 per 750 mils, with individual pours priced at $225 at the Garden and Gun Club. That's crazy. Is there any other? I mean, let's put it this way. You would think a 30-year-old bourbon would basically be oak soup. Like, just disgusting. I've never been a huge fan of the Pappy 23-year. I think Evan Williams did a 23-year, or I think Heaven Hill did a 25-year. I've never been a fan of any of them. It's just too oak forward. Stock, with it's 100% malted barley grain mash bill. It just works better with those higher ages. Bourbon, corn doesn't. Never. I don't think it ever has. I'm sure there's a market out there that loves it. But what's real interesting to me is the proof on this. 54.5% ABV is insane. Over 100 proof for a 30-year-old bourbon is crazy to me. I would expect it to be like closer to 80, 85. 54.5. I'm assuming that's barrel strength. It has to be barrel strength. They can't be putting water into this. And if anybody listening to this has a sample of this and wants to send me a little bit, I will review it on the podcast because I'd be very interested, but I don't think I'd like it. But anyways, I thought it was interesting because you don't see 30-year-old bourbon too often. And I suppose if you have the stock, do it. But that whiskey was distilled 3 years before I was even born. So, like, that's cool. That's the only reason I'd want to try is because this was laid down and put in an oak cask over 3 years before I was born, which to me that's very cool. And then, there's one more from another article from the Whiskey Wash, and the winners from the top shelf competition from the people that put on San Francisco World Spirits Competition. And by the Tasting Alliance. That's what I was looking for. And the best, let me go down. Best straight bourbon was Elijah Craig Barrel Proof C924. Really? Interesting, because I just saw that on the shelf here in Rhode Island for $50 the other day. I should go get it. I will go get it, actually. I think it's around 125 proof or something like that. And I have 8 or 9 Elijah Craig. I actually was organizing my whiskey collection. Like I have this right behind me. If you're watching on YouTube, I have this little shelf here in my living room, but in my bedroom, I have like most of my whiskey on another shelf. And I was organizing it all, and I think my oldest Elijah Craig barrel proof that I have is A119, which is real cool. Maybe I'll have some of that tonight. But Elijah Craig Barrel Proof C924 winning Best Straight Bourbon at the Top Shelf 2025 is pretty cool. And then we had Best Small Batch Bourbon up to 5 years, 1792 small batch. Another win for old Sazerac. Best Small Batch Bourbon 6 to 10 years was the ASW Distillery Fiddler Encore Bourbon in Georgia Oak. We'll have to look more into that. Best Small Batch Bourbon 11 years and older. Best Overall Small Batch Bourbon was the OKI Bourbon 15-year straight bourbon whiskey. Again, never had it. Best Single Barrel Bourbon up to 10 years was the Sapphire Bourbon 8-year-old Kentucky Straight Bourbon. Best Single Barrel 11 years and older, and the Best Single Barrel in general was the OKI 16-year-old Kentucky Bourbon. So OKI is coming out with some great stuff. Wish they were, a little cheaper. Best Special Barrel Finished Bourbon, Best Overall Bourbon was the Starlight Distillery Japanese Mizunara Reserve Finished Bourbon. Shout out to my man, Christian. Shout out to Christian. Christian Huber. Good friend of mine. Great guy. One of the only other people I know that's near my age in the whiskey industry. He's way more talented than me. But, we're just as passionate about whiskey, and that's deserved. I've never had that, but that's deserved. The best weeded bourbon was the Frank August Case Study 5-barrel batch. I've never had Frank August, but I bet you that's pretty good. The best craft distiller is Starlight. Single barrel bourbon, deserved. Best Tennessee whiskey is Old Dominic Bonded. Best corn whiskey, Dancing Goat Distillery, the Spaniard corn whiskey. I think that's in Wisconsin, Dancing Goat. I could be wrong. Best wheat whiskey, Heaven Hill Heritage Collection, 2025, 19-year-old wheat whiskey. I mean, that makes sense. Best rye whiskey is the Wenzel Whiskey Rectifier. Never even heard of that. Best single grain whiskey, Frey Ranch 100% barley whiskey, unmalted. I'm looking at a little 375 that I was just given the other day of Frey Ranch 100% corn whiskey, which is basically like Mellow Corn's older, more handsome brother. So that's cool. Anyways, that's just some recent news that I wanted to touch on. I kind of want to keep this episode a little short. Shout out to Starlight. Best finished bourbon and best overall bourbon at Top Shelf. That's not something to sniff your nose at. That is the real deal. And that's much deserved. I love Starlight. I've been there. And they're very good people, but most importantly, their setup is super impressive, but also super efficient, which is cool. And their whiskey is top notch. So, but outside of that, we do have some new whiskey cocktails that we're promoting for McTavish Spirits, which is awesome. Right now, we're actively promoting the McTavish Harvest Cider, which is more or less you take 3 ounces of apple cider, 2 ounces of the War Chief, then you put in a half ounce of Simple and a half ounce of lemon juice, I think. Could be wrong. Let me check my pictures real quick. Should probably know that. Yeah, half ounce of lemon juice, and then you basically put them all in a shaker, shake it over ice, pour it into a glass over ice, strain it, and then garnish it with a cinnamon stick. And I've had it a few times here. We're running it at my local bar here in Westerly, Surf Cantina, and we've already moved through like 2 bottles of our bourbon, selling it in like a week. It's very good. And our next themed cocktail is going to be the McTavish Holiday Mule, which is something that I created. It wasn't very hard because I love whiskey and I love cocktails. But basically, we're taking 3 ounces of ginger beer. We're going to take 2 ounces of the War Chief, and then we're going to do a half ounce of fresh lime juice, and then a half ounce of cranberry juice. And this is important because the cranberry juice is tart, and it's going to play against the sweetness and the prickliness of the ginger beer very nicely. And then basically you just put that into preferably a copper mug, but if you just have a glass, put it all into a glass over ice, mix it up well, just do it right in the glass. You don't need to shake it. And then garnish it with some rosemary and some cranberries if you have some. We're going to be running that at Surf Cantina right after Thanksgiving. But what's cool, John, the bar manager at Surf Cantina, told me that he made his own in-house cranberry-infused simple syrup. So they're going to use that. So it's going to be a little bit sweeter. But we're going to promote that, and we hope to see a bunch of those being made across the country. I love these themed cocktails, and I just think they're great. They help us move products. They help people that don't drink whiskey try our stuff, and hopefully it makes new fans of the brand. So, but that being said, we're about 40 minutes in, and I gotta go. I actually have to eat dinner. It's just about 6 o'clock. So this was great. It's nice to catch up with you guys again. Happy Holly Jolly season. I've already watched all the Christmas movies. Probably throw on Home Alone tonight while I eat dinner. Have a glass of bourbon, chillax for a bit. We got a busy end of the month here with McTavish Spirits. By the time this episode comes out, I would have already done my tasting at Wyoming Package Store, which is Friday, November 14th. Because I'm filming this before that, I'm going to talk to my future self right now and just assume that it went really well. This upcoming Friday, which will be, I got to look at the date since I'm filming this differently. November 21st, we're going to do a tasting event at Pier Liquors in Narragansett, Rhode Island. And then the following Friday, the 28th, Black Friday, we are going to be doing a tasting event at Haxton Tollgates in Warwick, Rhode Island, which is actually the largest liquor store by volume here in the great state of Rhode Island. So busy close to the month here. We're really grinding. We want all you guys to try McTavish Spirits, and it's my goal as the founder, as the master blender, as the janitor, as the accountant, as the bar back, whatever you want to call me. I just want more people to try it because I believe in McTavish a lot. So make sure you're subscribed here on YouTube if that's where you're watching. If you're listening, make sure you're subscribed on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever it is. I'm Connor_whiskey on Instagram. So go follow me there. Keep up to date with everything that I'm doing in life. And make sure you're following the brand as well. McTavish Spirits. MCTAVISH. McTavish Spirits. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, everywhere. We post. We stay up to date. Visit our website. You can check out more recipes for the season, but also just generic cocktail stuff that we've done. You can also find a store locator that is updated for the state of Rhode Island as of earlier this week. We're also working to update it for all of our other markets, including Alaska, Wisconsin, Kentucky, and Georgia, to be specific. So make sure that you follow us there. Go to our website. Sign up for our newsletter. That's where we pump out information on a need-to-know basis. And those need-to-know people are the people that are subscribed to our newsletter. So make sure you're subscribed there. Once again, I'm Connor. Thank you for listening to Who Gives a Dram. I don't know what number episode it is. I'm very happy to be back. I hope you like my Christmas tree because I like it. I put it up all by myself. And always remember, whiskey's the water of life, so let's start living.